I think that's just one of the nice things, man. People are always there trying to help you, especially in the context of Gauntlet. People are always sharing information. Everyone wants to see other people do better. And I think that's just one of the really nice things about PoE's community.
It's time to end this.
The Merciless Gauntlet is drawing close, so we sat down with Jungrown to talk all things Path of Exile. If you're new to the Gauntlet, it's the premier Path of Exile competitive event, with the difficulty dialed up to 11. Just in case solo self-found hardcore wasn't enough for you. But this includes extra modifiers during the campaign and endgame. But watch out for those endgame bosses, because they're harder than ever. You might recall our interviews with Ben and Exile from a couple years back, but if you don't, there's a link in the description to watch those. But let's hit pause for 1 second, for a word from our sponsor, before getting right back into the interview with Jungrown.
Do you want to bring some color and excitement to your walls and show off your interests and hobbies? Displate makes that possible with their awesome metal posters. Not only do they look vibrant and amazing, but they also are incredibly easy to set up. No longer do you have to drill holes in your walls, as every displate is attached by a magnetic sticker. After applying a protective layer, you stick this magnet to your wall. It makes it extremely easy to adjust and swap your displates out. It's so simple even I can do it. Displates come in all shapes and sizes, with a focus on being customizable and collectible. They offer a countless unique and licensed artwork, including the Gauntlet collection. You can find all of the Gauntlet designs that we have created for each event with the different artists with different versions suited to your personal taste. Head on over to display.com and use code Zizaran at checkout for a unique discount on your orders and these amazing metal posters. And I've had a huge display thing made on my wall behind me that is also for sale, as well as the individual soldiers. Check it out and look how cool it looks. Displates are not yet edible, so please don't try eating them.
But let's go back to a time before Path of Exile. Let's go to a time when you were competing in esports, right? Other players like Ben and Karn have similarly competed in esports before getting into Path of Exile as well. Do you think this connection with maybe like competitive esports or just competition in general has affected how you play the game and how you enjoy it, especially with this upcoming Gauntlet coming up?
I think about it a lot. I mean, in League of Legends, I was pretty washed. Like, there was a lot of politics and a lot of noise at the time, but when I link it back to like sports and like in high school and college, I think a lot of the more methodical nature of preparation and stuff and being really willing to embrace the process of like, you know, failing a lot at the start and like messing a lot of things up, making a lot of like growth type mistakes really feeds into an event that's like the Gauntlet, where there's so many unknown variables and you're just thinking about so many ways to learn. So rather than like think about like, oh, some sort of competitive edge or like that sort of thing, I think that is the first thing. And then I would say the second thing when you talk about that strikes me is when I watch back my performance, I think that I generally overperform. I know that some people choke, and I'm not really sure. Like, I've done a lot of reading and listened to a lot of people talk about like what it means to perform under pressure and that sort of thing. But I do think that a setting like that probably like leads in and evokes a lot of the old emotions I used to feel and tends to make me a little bit more alert. But I think that's pretty much the only relations I'd see.
Yeah, so it's that environment, that competitive environment that you really enjoy, whether it's like in sports or Path of Exile or it's League of Legends. It's that sort of environment, something you really enjoy that you thrive off of, right? A follow-up question I have is like the right type of practice to simulate that Gauntlet. How are you going about that specifically?
I guess let's contextualize this first. I made this claim a little while back because obviously every Gauntlet I watch everyone boss, right? My contention is that outside of maybe like 4 or 5 people total, maybe 6 or 7 people total, the rest of people entering bosses do not practice bossing, which to me is insane. It's like not that hard to do gear, especially now with new format and everything. Gear progression is actually really easy to do, and you're pretty much just playing regular League. There's maybe like 10-ish things in a Uber-fied Gauntlet, Uber boss that can kill you, and they'll die within the first 30 seconds. So I'm like, okay, you haven't even thought about the start of this fight. Forget about the new variables. So the other piece of this is, I used to talk to this guy a lot. I guess you could call him like a world first raider type. And he always talked about reducing the amount of thinking that you do, reducing the amount of thoughts per second that you do in any sort of like big challenge. Because when it comes down to an event like this, you're fighting bosses that are new for all intents and purposes, with a lot of familiar variables. Let's take a fight like Exarch, for instance. When I'm walking into Uber, Exarch, and Gauntlet, I want to make sure that every single mechanic that he normally does not matter to me. Like, it's just completely automatic, every single thing. It's not like, oh, I'm actively dodging balls now. I'm not actively dodging annihilation. I want to know the exact pace of annihilation at 40% turbo. So I know the exact pace of the shield charge I'll be playing at. I want to know his incineration timing. I'm not trying to count, let's just say with turbo, like, I don't know, 2.3 seconds. I'm not counting that. I want that to be ingrained in my head. So that every like mental piece is committed to 2 things. 1, new ideas that are coming up in the fight with like the new environment stuff and like shaper operations. And then 2, damage uptime. So like the practice that leads into that would be, I remember back after Sentinel Gauntlet, I want to say. Oh no, back after Sanctum Gauntlet. I did okay in that. I like 1 shadow, but I was a little pissed off because I think I should have cleared. And I was thinking about Exarch. So after that, I ran like, I put 1 Exarch invitation into the map device. And then I did the 3rd ball phase like 100 times in a row. I was just trying to get like 10 in a row where I didn't touch a ball. And then it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I just wanted to get perfect on the ball phase. So that next time I was doing an event, I could like really quickly get back to that state and then not even think about balls during that phase, right? So I think it's like that sort of type of preparation where you're really trying to automate all the things that you can and do know already, and then do it in a way that's very mechanical, repetitive, and just being ready for what's new, the things that we don't know.
Yeah. You want the predictable problems to be like a mechanical reaction, like muscle memory, right? Where whether it's the balls, as you say, you can just I don't say easily dodge them. None of this is easy, but it's routine for you rather than and just having to, as you say, use your brain power on those new things for the fight. Makes total sense, and leads me into a bit of a maybe not a bit of a side, maybe bring us back to that sort of competitive question. But a lot of our other interviewees mentioned that other PvE games has like improved their awareness and general bossing knowledge. Like I think for both I'm Exile and Ben in previous interviews mentioned obviously WoW was a big one for them, and other MMOs where you're having to deal with like raids and like multiple different things and multiple different bosses, and that sort of helped in a way prepare them for maybe Path of Exile, maybe not specifically Gauntlet. Have you had any other like experiences like that specifically in the video game space, rather than maybe just the competitive nature, but the actual mechanical side of video gaming and that side of stuff?
I guess I had a lot of bad habits built up from playing Final Fantasy 14. In that game, all I really did was parse, and I just wanted to like farm golds basically. And so I got a lot of bad habits about like damage uptime and trying to optimize in a way that's really not important in this sort of thing. In the same way, when you play softcore trade in PoE, like you get really obsessed with the wrong types of things. People will start to loosely bully you for having like a 3-second boss kill instead of a 5-second boss kill. And so you get a little bit obsessed with the wrong things. So I spent a lot of time from the transition of when I usually play softcore trade to when I play Gauntlet, kind of just cleansing my brain, de-rusting a lot of things. And when it comes to, I think, processing information, the truth is for me, I don't do that. Like, I would just say that things become generally automatic. I try to learn from each rip as they happen over the course of my entire life, and then as things are happening. And that tends to become pretty well internalized once I see it one time. But after that, I would just say like there's things that are happening on my screen and my eyes are pretty lazy when I play. I don't know how many people can relate to this, but I just feel really physically lazy when I'm doing harder or like high noise, high variable content in PvE games. And I just trust my instincts to do whatever I need it to do. And then otherwise, I just like pretty much also I'm a spectator in a sense. I'm just like watching whatever's in front of me play out. That's what it feels like to me. So I can't really relate to those guys. I don't really process information the same way. And a lot of times I don't even click on the buffs to see what they do. I just hope and pray and trust preparation.
You want to just have your attention on the external factors or the new factors rather than that sort of the stuff that you can make routine.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to manage like 10 mechanics. I want to automatically do 9 and then just do 1. Right.
And you brought up a really interesting point, which is like the softcore versus hardcore, which is always a debate in Path of Exile, like it or not, right? The games play really differently in these different environments, right? And making that transition from softcore to hardcore, which is going to lead me kind of into this sort of, I don't want to say next segment, because that's maybe too strong of a word, but I think builds in general, especially with this being Freesia Ascendancies, which is I'm super excited for, I won't lie to you. Are you excited? But the fact that the Freesia is coming back, are there things that players should be wary of, right? Are there things we should look out for to avoid?
I guess the first side note is that people should remember that reduced damage taken is different than damage reduction, but reduced damage taken is additive within itself. So that's just a side note. If you know what I'm talking about, it's pretty interesting and pretty strong. There's probably 3 parts. Firstly, it's always hard, I think, in 2 weeks. It takes people longer than 2 weeks to make a good build in the core league. In the context of free shit and stuff, when things are changing, it's really, really hard, I think, in this time frame to make a really strong build. The second thing is that in PoE in general, like in software trade and like on YouTube and whatever, you could say, oh, there's tons of build makers. But in a setting where you actually can lose and can die and things actually are hard, and the game balance is a little bit more reasonable, is what I would say Gauntlet is, because the game balance core league is unreasonable. We are incredibly power crept. There actually aren't that many build makers, because it's not like build making is that different in Gauntlet, to be honest. It's actually roughly the same as it is in regular Path of Exile. You want to make something with good defense, good mobility, good playstyle, good damage. But the number of people that can actually do that efficiently goes down significantly. And it's one of the reasons why all these people that call themselves build makers all the time can't make anything when it comes to this event. That said, Freesia is really interesting. I think Freesia is one of the Ascendancy sets, or is an Ascendancy set that front loads your power for a lot of the stronger Ascendancies. By normal lab, sometimes you're as strong as like a level 80 character in the core league because of things like, Envy right away, or like Paladin auras, or having like +3 to every min charge. Things like that are really powerful in the early game. So I think there's a lot of things that feel could be at least theorizing for that part of the gauntlet. And they could be kind of thinking about builds a little bit as they go in, and a little bit after. I will say there's a lot of convergence towards Ephemeral Edge. It's sort of the big outlier. I will be not playing Ephemeral Edge because I don't want to. But there's a lot of convergence towards that, I think, for like 3 reasons. One, it's probably, or it can be the strongest build. It's one of the strongest defensive builds. It's more than strong enough to clear the gauntlet, as you saw last gauntlet. Like, I don't think either of me or Ben's runs through last time looked hard. They were like pretty easy to execute mechanically. So I think like there's a large number of players who, if they're able to achieve that level of build strength against these current bosses, which are like, I don't know, 20% stronger, will easily clear pretty much. There's gonna be that kind of convergence. I think the other thing is that, like, yes, we understand the public profile rule, and I'm a huge fan of that to some degree. I hate what players do with it in terms of just like basically tech decking someone else's stuff, and just copying everything all the way through, from the progression path to what they're farming to the entire gear set. Like, to me, that's really boring. And this would have been a really good gauntlet to have much bigger build diversity, because there's new uniques, right, from the new bosses.
Yeah.
Given that we don't know if they're farmable or not, it's really, really high risk to make a strategy around those uniques. And beyond risky, it's a little bit stupid, right? Because if Ephemeral Edge is already strong enough to clear, why would you, or anyone who takes themselves seriously as a racer, opt for a really high risk strat with possibly a slightly higher payout, which may not even be true? Or you just play Ephemeral Edge and do that progression. So I think that's like, a little bit disappointing. I would love to see the new bosses just be farmable, to know that they are farmable, so that we can build around, I think there's 4 or 5 different items from those bosses that could be entirely build enabling for gauntlet clearing builds.
Are there any specific ascendancies that you're looking for or looking forward to playing again? Because obviously we've only had a short 1-month event, or maybe it was 2 months for Freesia last time, that you're excited to just jump back into.
I think Paladin this time is really progression enabling. Talking to Brutu a little while back, and he thinks in terms of mercenary progression that Pathfinder with flask scaling is kind of the way to keep your mercs strong and alive in the early game. I wonder if that applies here, and I'll probably be doing a Paladin start myself. Some of the options you can go for as a support really early are actually much stronger than I could have possibly imagined. Scavenger is interesting this time around. We'll see what people end up opting for. I think Tofoa's spelling on the bottom side of that tree is really crazy. It enables static strike as a skill, which is going to be higher single target than pretty much anything we've ever seen other than Return Proj from Vengeance Cascade, as far as like, reasonable build setups go. So that's going to be really strong. A lot of people have been talking about Ancestral Commander. I think it's only interesting to play under 2 conditions. The first is that you have a good Antiquarian respec for Ephemeral Edge. And then the second one that I think people need to be thinking about more is Wrathpith. Both on Ancestral Commander and on Bog Shaman, when I have looked at Wrathpith, it is reaching defensive numbers that are probably around 70 to 80% as good as Ephemeral Edge, but you do get to play your spell of choice. And The defensives are very different. The recovery is different. Obviously, Ancestral Commander has its own set, has better physical mitigation as well. But then the other one is Bog Shaman, another great life stacker. Definitely something that people should or could be considering because of... Let's put it this way. People play ES because you want 18,000 ES.
Yeah.
But you can hit 20,000 life and have a reasonable character that still does very, very similar things that has a really fun playstyle. And the number of recovery mechanics that are in the game right now are really crazy. So if your name is not Ben or Nick, you can be thinking about farming for more than 3 or 4 days, looking for certain uniques on a Bog Shaman like Blood Notch Immutable Force. It's not unreasonable to MF for those things because the core mapping is so easy. And I would love to see someone come out with a Wrathpith Bog because I do think that build can very, very likely full clear. And I guess just like the last two obvious ones probably that people have been thinking about quite often are Polytheist and Oshabi. Again, those are both Ephemeral Edge Ascendancies. And so I guess the most exciting thing at the end of the day will be to see what people end up doing on Shadow. And hopefully it's not just Surfcaster or Ephemeral Edge. But yeah, those are sort of my top picks for Ascendancies. I think I'm going to play Paladin. In the worst case scenario, you can always swap over to Riskrat, again, Ephemeral Edge, but we'll see what Mercs can do this gauntlet.
An interesting point you bring up about like the different content creators and how they're making their builds. Do you have any, maybe like even just shorthand advice for those who are already making builds or are known to make builds to make them even better for Gauntlet or more interesting, or maybe look at their builds in a different way for an event like this?
I mean, as far as like the really good build makers, I'm sure they're more efficient than I am actually, and like doing better. For like the people that are just trying to make something interesting and like fight bosses, I would say that do not use the left sidebar of the defaults in Path of Building. You should be thinking about every fight individually. The progression is easy. You don't need to worry about that. And everything leading into Ubers should be relatively easy. You should be going through each Uber fight and looking at each attack individually, seeing what the damage profile is. So you don't think to yourself, oh my god, I have like, 50,000 max fizz hit. You should be thinking, okay, the Shaper Slam is going to do as much as Uber Shaper Slam can do. Let's assume a crit roll on that. Let's assume I'm at 80% health because there's noise and just random damage coming out. And let's assume the damage modifiers on that. How much damage will I be left with after the Shaper Slam? And then you write that number down. And then you go and look, okay, how many Shaper Balls can I tank? And then you write that number down. And then you think, okay, if there's a Shaper Ball coming out at the same time as Uber Elders doing something, how many things can I tank? And you should be looking at all your max hits in that way. It's a more methodical process and it's much less, oh look, my max hit is this. But it actually leads to you building a lot more specifically for every fight and a lot better. You'll be thinking about when does Tempest Shield come in? When do I want to run a block setup? When do I need passive recovery instead? But if you choose to go for aggregate numbers and think about things in terms of what Path of Building is just telling you, chances are you'll end up with a build that's not optimal. And when it's not optimized in a relatively short setting like this, you'll probably die in the first 30 seconds of the fight. So yeah, look through every skill individually.
To be fair, it's a really interesting take, right? And I guess to bring it into the wider concept of PoE, maybe taking a step away from Gauntlet for players who are just starting out making builds from scratch, or do you think following build guides to learn some sort of core mechanics from the game?
I think from scratch building doesn't make a lot of sense to do. Back when I was in the policy innovation line of work, and that was really brief because I didn't like the innovation set, we talked about what the pipeline actually looked like. And we liked often in that world to separate the idea of inventions and innovation. When you're inventing something, you're coming up with something brand new, a core new concept that's new. And then we, for some reason, talk about innovation as bringing that concept to market. And I think that in the context of this event especially, it doesn't make a lot of sense to like fully homebrew. I think it's fun to do, and there's a good chance you'll land upon something that's like completely new. But I don't think there's anything bad or wrong with taking concepts that already exist, and you're going to be mixing and matching concepts, right? So you're looking at, okay, what's new in Merc League, and then cross-referencing that against what was there in Freesia League, which is a totally different setting when you're playing solo as well. And then building iteratively on that. I think if you're wanting to have like a pretty good experience, and even wanting to find things that are brand new, it doesn't make sense to ignore everything that's already there. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. If you want to invent, look for all the wheels that are already there, and then look, beside that, adjacent to that.
Although, we're talking about builds in the past in an interview with Ziz, you mentioned one of your favorite ways of coming up with unique builds, which maybe doesn't have a fit specifically for Gauntlet, but is to browse the forum section with like looking at bugs and unintended weird skill interactions. Are you keen to share any other sort of tricks of the trade or trying to stoke that inner creativity when making builds?
I would say that that's more of a joke than anything. When I
No
say
idea.
that, I think like the biggest thing to know about forums is that it's basically useless. The first time I played a guide off forums is something I'll always remember. It was the worst thing I've ever played in PoE. And when I do forum guide reviews, it's always more of a I'm risking a chance to get banned on Twitch for a week. Anyways,
Bit of tongue in cheek, right? Bit tongue in cheek when you review them. Fair.
oh man, they're just terrible. Anyways, that's not important. Softcore trade and hardcore SSF are more similar than you'd think. That's what I would say. It's really interesting to see that there's not that many people with a huge overlap between like really high-end juice and then a solo self-found gameplay. Like guys like obviously like the high-end SFHC racers farm insane characters. Like, you know, I think guys like Business and stuff do some pretty absurd things in SSF, like Manny. But a lot of SC trade racers or players really don't even realize how much SSF players can farm. The new Scarab change has really moved things so that you are much more likely to get the Scarabs that you're preferring. So Edifice strats become very, very, very possible to self-sustain. Risk becomes much more easier to get closer to sustaining as well. T17s being incredibly easy means as soon as you feel like your core gear set is done, you start barrel farming. So you can actually play some really, really high-end builds. So I wouldn't think about like, oh, I'm constraining myself in this race, doing this, that. I would be like, especially if you're not talking about like target farming high variance uniques like Watcher's Eyes and stuff. If you're ignoring that, I would be aiming for the stars for sure, in terms of what your build looks like. For most players, they should be thinking this way. I'm gonna have a really strong character that I have for progression. And then I have some target ideal character that I don't know if I'll build good items for. But from days, who knows, 3 till 8, I'll be slowly progressing into harder and harder farm strats. And by like day 6, 7, or 8, it's very likely I'm doing strats that are getting, you know, Divine Drop every 4 to 5 maps, or, you know, getting a T1 plus unique every 10 maps. And at that stage, then you start to open up a lot of possibility for things like Mage Blood on your build, which won't pivot your build entirely, but will make it much stronger and allow you to change certain things. So like, yeah, I mentioned the unique jewels. Allow yourself the possibility and the thought of at least having those really strong things. Every gauntlet before Sanctum, up to Sanctum, I always made a POB for Replica Alberons because we heisted a lot. And I knew Replica Alberons always had a possible angle. It was a little bit hard to, and you know, I just never knew it would drop. But I think in 3 gauntlets in a row, I ended up getting Replica Alberons. And the POB ended up being worse than what I wanted to play. But just having that there is really important, I think. Just give yourself the opportunity to, like, MF, basically.
In the and in the last gauntlet, we saw everyone calling their characters after you because of a bounty set by Fubgun. Is there any? Are you thinking of like exacting revenge? Are you gonna have a bounty of your own to maybe a little jab back at him, or are we just gonna let this sleeping dogs lie with this one?
We don't poke the bear that's Fubgun. Last time there was Fubgun beef, he ended up beating Ben in a hardcore race, you know. So I'm pretty scared of that guy.
Not to cut anything short, but and to end on a bit of a fun note, and and maybe the most serious question of the entire conversation: if you had to date, marry, and kill any Path of Exile streamer, racer, or content creator, I guess who would they be? The ball's in your court, Joe.
I'm gonna take the coward's way out. I would probably first of all marry Ben. He's been playing the same build for 2 years now. So for anyone with cheating trauma, you'd want to just be with someone who isn't likely to just like cheat on you, flip out, you know, and just do whatever. That guy's, I've literally seen an ephemeral edge on his character for at least 80% of his streams over the past, I don't know, since 2024. So that's
He's nothing if not loyal, right? It's nothing if not loyal.
Dating wise, I'd pick Rue. I've heard a lot of things about Ruber Eats. I've heard a lot of things. I think he's a pretty good host. He's definitely there for a good time, not a long time, and that's gonna be good because then afterwards, assuming we can date for like a year or so, I can get common law status and then kind of claim all of his assets, which, you know, significant for sure. And in terms of kill, I don't want to kill anyone. You know, everyone's so nice. This is the best thing about the PoE community is like, especially like creator side, racer side, unless you're like asking dumb questions all the time, everyone is super helpful. Everyone is super nice. Other than me, I will not help you. I think that's just one of the nice things, man. People are always there trying to help you, especially in the context gauntlet. People are always sharing information. This whole thing about like secret builds, whatever, no one really actually does that. Everyone's always just trying to progress things. Everyone wants to see other people do better. And I think that's just one of the really nice things about PoE's community, especially when it comes to hardcore racing. If you're trying to get good, if you're trying to improve, you don't need to do that on your own. Just reach out, improve alongside us, enjoy the progression, ask a lot of questions, and just be there before the gauntlet. We'll have a great time together.
No, I couldn't agree more. Right. When I was used to cast the gauntlet, the amount of new players that come in. Oh, this is my first time trying, and I would say, oh, like go check out Jung, check out Ben, like ask questions here. Granted, if people are in the middle of a boss fight, they might not reply, but the outpouring of support from content creators to their communities and vice versa is always one of my favorite parts of Gauntlet. Especially being on this side of the camera and things, maybe not being a racer myself, but again, I just want to really thank you for your time, Jung. You've been an amazing interviewee, is the way to put it. You're so knowledgeable about the game. Everybody watch the video. Please check him out. He'll be racing on July 31st for this Merciless Gauntlet. Can't wait, and we'll see you all there.
See you at the finish line, man. Cheers.